All right, there we go. What's going on, guys? I had to do a little bit of a start screen there, but we're in there. We're ready to go. I just wanted to make sure the stream was healthy. How everybody doing? What's going on? I saw, let me see. I saw Denzel. I saw Kyle. I saw Jack. What's up, Jack? Saw Darren. Saw all kinds of people. What's going on, guys? First one I saw was about, what's up, Rex? First one I saw was about the trade of the day. First trade of the offseason with Dwight Howard and the Nets. I was happy because I'm a Nets fan, and it's a great deal for them, you know, to get out from under Mozgov's contract. Dwight actually had a pretty good year, and they have a ton of second-round picks to spare. The Hornets wanted to get under the luxury tax, so that's why they did it. But, I mean, they had a lot of other options to be able to do that, and I don't know why this trade was why this trade was their means to being able to get under the luxury tax. It's ridiculous that they are a tax team when they've won like 35 games each of the past 2 years. But that's what I heard, was they're trying to get on the luxury tax. The Nets get Dwight, who's actually probably going to help them, even though people really don't like him. He still had a pretty good year for them. And then the Hornets, I guess, get under the tax, but they get an extra year of Mozgov's contract. The Nets already had a ton of salary coming off next offseason anyway, and now they have even more because Dwight's deal will run out. AJ, what's up, bud? Someone else was asking about draft day trades. Two teams I would keep an eye, actually three, would be the Celts, the Hawks, and the Bulls. The Hawks have two late picks, I think 19 and 30. And I've seen some things about them moving up. The Bulls as well. They've kind of been connected to Mo Bamba a lot at 7, but that might just be fake, and they might have some other guys that they'd like to go up and get. And then the Celtics, depending on how the big men fall, I think could definitely be players to try and move up a little bit as well. Psych, I saw the same thing. You're talking about the Grizz and Mavs trying to make some things happen. I think the Grizz are probably the most likely to move back because they're really trying to dump Chandler Parsons' contract. I don't really know who the Mavs would be trying to flip the 4 and 5 for. Maybe Mo Bamba, maybe Michael Porter Jr. I don't really know who they would just be dying to flip. But I've heard Wendell Carter's name connected with the Grizz a lot, and I think maybe they just want to move back and try and get him maybe like 6 or 7. So maybe they could trade with the Bulls. But in terms of moving back, I've heard Memphis a lot. What's up, Chris? What's up, Radar? What's up, King? When do I think Grayson Allen will be picked? I don't know, Paragon. It's tough once you get later because, you know, those guys could go top 15. They could go, you know, in the 30s. Once you get really past the lottery into these like late first round guys, I know some people have guarantees or whatever, but it's tough to tell because guys can move up and buy picks. So it's kind of tough to see where he's going to get picked. I would imagine he's going to be, with all the positive buzz around him, I would imagine he's going to be a first round guy, but to who, I have no idea. Who do I think the Clippers should get back to back? That was AJ's question. It's probably going to be a guard and a big. I think they need to get a guy in case DeAndre Jordan either declines the option or they just want to trade him. I think they need to get a big. And then I'd like to have a guard as well to have insurance against Avery Bradley leaving as well, because they're a team that still wants to compete for the playoffs because they re-signed Doc Rivers, who wouldn't have stuck around if they were going to rebuild. So they're still trying to compete for the playoffs moving forward. So depending on how the guards fall, they might be in it for Colin Sexton, maybe Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And in terms of bigs, once you get that late, it just really depends on who else got picked. But I've also heard that they might want to package 12 and 13 to move into the top 10. It's going to be interesting. I'm really excited. I haven't been this excited for a draft in a long time just because I feel like there's so many things that could happen, and there's so many teams with multiple picks early that could be looking to move up, and there's so many big guys at the top of the rankings that if you really want to get your guy, you might have to move up to make it happen. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm really excited. Yeah, Dougie, I didn't put Lonnie Walker in my mock draft, but having watched a lot of ACC basketball, I do like him a lot. I think he definitely could go in the lottery. Kind of a high risk, high reward guy, but I really like Lonnie Walker. Conehead, what do you think why do you think Mo Bamba is gonna go solo at 7? Also, do you think the Spurs will keep Kawhi? I don't think Mo Bamba's going to go 7. This is just like if I was drafting, I would not pick him. If I was any team before 7, I wouldn't pick him. Just because I like a lot of guys in this draft, honestly. Like there's just a lot of people and a lot of players in this draft that I really, really like. Jaren Jackson, Luka Doncic, Wendell Carter, to a certain extent, Marvin Bagley. And I'm just not that big on the hype train that Mo Bamba is going to be this huge difference maker on both ends of the floor. I understand the length. I understand, there's videos going around of him making threes. But, I mean, I've talked about this multiple times. Let's say he becomes Rudy Gobert defensively, Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Still not helping you a ton against spread offenses like the Warriors or Rockets. So if you're thinking about postseason success and kind of the way the league has been going recently in terms of, spreading the offenses more, I don't think that having a guy that big that really can't move his feet super well in ball screens is going to help you a ton. What's up, Doc? How you doing? Yeah, someone asked about Kemba being traded for Colin Sexton. I think Kemba is probably going to be traded regardless, just based off some of their moves. I mean, Charlotte, they might have the worst roster construction in the league when you're taking into account the fact that they're paying so much money. Before today, they were slated to be a luxury tax team, and they're not winning very many games. So I do think Kemba is going to be traded, and it might be kind of like the Jimmy Butler situation last year where he got traded on draft night. Not really out of the blue, but it definitely surprised some people, and Kemba could be one of those guys once we get to like the second half of the top 10. Archer says, what do you think about Michael Porter Jr.? I don't know. I'm kind of torn because it's tough to evaluate a guy that played, less than 40 minutes of college basketball. I know he's a very highly touted player prior to going to college. But with the injury issues and things like that, I know he's a very confident kid. He's pretty big for a wing. He's got a lot of skill. I'm just really hesitant to pick him within like the top 8 picks, or the top 6 picks, just because he just didn't play a ton in college, right? Like you're basically banking on what he did in these individual workouts, which I obviously haven't gotten a chance to watch, and then what he did in high school. Now, the reason he is at 6 is because I think the Magic need to take some big swings, which is why he is where he is in the mock draft. But I think he's probably the most interesting domino of the entire draft. Him, Trae Young, and Mo Bamba can kind of set everything else up for the rest of these teams. I mean, he has the potential to maybe go 2, and he also probably has the potential to go 8. So anywhere in that range, I would be looking for Porter Jr. Rex, will Washington use one of their guards to acquire more picks? If I was them, I probably would try. It's just, if you're thinking about, John Wall, Bradley Beal, Otto Porter, trying to move one of those guys, right now it's just a little bit tough to find a team that has the space to take them on and also would want a player like that and would fit their timeline. I would try and do it if I was them, just because I think at the very top of this draft, there's a lot of big difference makers. I just don't know that they're going to be able to. No, I highly doubt it. If LiAngelo Ball gets drafted tomorrow night, I would be shocked. Yeah, Kurd, I saw some of those reports about the Raptors trying to get into the top 10 and anybody being available. I just don't know how much interest there is in any of those guys that they have to offer. I mean, if you're talking about an asset that has value, I mean, OG's pretty valuable. Obviously, Kyle and DeMar, but the problem is it's so tough with their contracts to find anybody to move him to that it can be really tough. So I know they want to get in the top 10. I don't know that it's going to happen, though, because if you're looking at, any of those teams in the top 10, with the exception of maybe the Cavs, none of them are really going to fit the timeline of a DeMar or Lowry trade. And I don't think the Cavs are going to want either of those guys. So they can try to get in the top 10, but I don't think it's going to happen. Eugene says, do you think Doncic will make an immediate impact on the league? Obviously, there's a potential to be wrong with every one of these picks, right? But I'm just confused about why Doncic is, I guess if you want to use the term, sliding down the draft. Because for a while he was considered maybe the first pick, and now it looks like, best case scenario, he's going to go to the Hawks at 3. And I just don't understand why we're hesitating so much with a guy that, is playing in the second best basketball league in the world and is playing extremely well at a young age better than any European prospect has ever at his age in a bigger league before coming to the NBA. Kristaps Porzingis was not playing this well at this young of an age before he came over. And I'm not saying that he's going to be Kristaps. I just don't understand why there's so much hesitation with him when he has shown so much tangible evidence in the second best basketball league in the world against grown men, that we're hesitating so much on his ability to make an immediate impact. So I would say yes. I'm still going to be patient with him. Like, I'm not going to freak out if he doesn't have a great rookie year, but I'm just confused about why people are hesitating so much. Doc, I will not eat my hat if LiAngelo Ball gets drafted, but I will be shocked. We'll just leave it at I will be shocked. Oh, yeah, clickbait. I heard the same thing, that he might stay one more year, but I think he's coming over. I don't think that would be the hesitation for any of these teams if he decided to stay another year, but I highly doubt that's going to happen. Elon says, why is Wendell so high? This one was, so the two biggest shocks in the mock draft that I put out, and I knew this at the time, were Jaren Jackson going 2, Ayton going 3, and then also Wendell Carter going over Marvin Bagley. And like I said, I've watched a ton of ACC basketball this year, and I just think in terms of translatable NBA skills and skill set and versatility, Wendell Carter's a better prospect. Now, Marvin Bagley is absolutely the better athlete, and I'm not going to argue that. But I think if you're looking at any other part of the game of basketball, I think Wendell Carter is better. I think that he gets a reputation of being like slow and like doesn't have great feet just because Bagley's such a great athlete. And I think that's the exact opposite. I think Wendell Carter actually moves better in switches than Marvin Bagley does. And I just think all around he's a better basketball player right now. And he's also shown a much better ability in terms of his form. Maybe not necessarily a huge gap in their numbers, but in terms of if you watch him shoot the basketball, I think he has a much better chance to be able to spread the floor at the NBA level than Bagley does. So that's why I like him better. And it's not like I don't like Bagley. I have him going the pick after, and I think going to the Mavs is a great situation, probably a better situation than going to the Grizzlies. So it's not going to be a bad thing for him if that's how it works out. I just overall think Wendell Carter Jr. is a better basketball player right now, and the athleticism is the only thing that Bagley has over him. Noah says, should the Suns look for a trade for the number 1 pick? I don't know. I mean, it depends on how badly someone wants DeAndre Ayton, right? And there have been some rumors about it, but I really don't think they're going to trade the pick. I think it's going to be Ayton, and I think really where the draft is going to start is with the Kings pick. I mean, I've read things that say that they're locked in on Bagley, that they're locked in on Michael Porter Jr., that Doncic is still in play. I've seen so many things about who the Kings might pick at 2, as well as potentially trading out of the 2nd spot, that's really where the draft is going to start. Now, if they take Michael Porter Jr. with that 2nd pick, I would be shocked in terms of like an evaluation standpoint, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Kings make that pick. I think the Bagley pick would be a mistake because I like Willie Cauley-Stein, and I think he can do a lot of good things at the 5. And unless you're counting on Marvin Bagley to be a skilled 4-man, which I think is a mistake, then I don't really see any reason to pick him when you already have Cauley-Stein. Yeah, so Arnell is asking about Trae Young, and I talked about this a little bit in the mock draft video, but I have no idea what's going to happen with Trae Young. I'll be honest. Like, it wouldn't shock me if he ends up being an all-star caliber player, and it wouldn't shock me if he was out of the league in 3 years. I have no idea. I can't figure him out. It's really going to depend on the team that he goes to, the situation that he's in, and you know how he's used, really. And I think New York would be a pretty good spot. I just have no idea how everything's going to work out for him, and I'm probably most unsure about him of any of the players in the entire draft. Yeah, Rex, I saw that, bud. Elon, I think the biggest thing about Mikal Bridges, I understand he's a little bit older, but I think the age thing is not as big of a deal to me because he showed so much improvement in his time at Villanova. Like, it's not like he barely played and then all of a sudden had a great final year, similar to how Buddy Hield came into the draft. He showed progression through his entire career, and I think that's going to continue in the NBA. And I really like his defensive ability. I really like players coming out of Villanova, and he shoots the crap out of the ball. And I think those are two things that he's going to need to do in the NBA to stick around, and I think he's going to be able to do them both very well. Renwick says, what do you think the Bulls should do this offseason? That's a question I've had in my mind and I've seen around a lot on Twitter. I don't know, because I've seen them move up. I've seen rumors of them moving up. I've seen rumors of them staying put and taking Mo Bamba. I wouldn't be against a front court player because there's so many good bigs at the beginning of this draft. So if I was them, depends on where Jaren Jackson goes. If we get to like the 5th pick and Jaren Jackson is on the board, I might consider moving up. But if the guy that I want isn't there at 7, then I would probably move back. It's so tough to tell right now because we're not in the middle of the draft, but I'm excited to watch it tomorrow night and see how it unfolds. Yeah, Alvaro, we just talked about Mo Bamba a little bit. I don't think he's going to be as big of a difference maker defensively as a lot of other people. And I don't hate him. It's just there's a lot of other really good bigs in this draft, and I think we're getting a little carried away with the hype train on him. Yeah, Connor, I don't know, because I've heard so many things about the Grizz trying to move back to package Parsons' contract, and it's tough. Like, it's an awful contract, and you want to get out from underneath it. But is it worth moving back a couple of spots? I don't know. If I'm one of those teams, like I've heard potentially Philly moving up, taking Parsons' contract, and trying to get, you know, a little bit further up, and that basically is an admission that you don't think you're going to be able to sign a big free agent because you're going to have to take back Parsons' contract. So I don't know. The Grizzlies are a super interesting team to watch because I've heard so much about them moving back, and I mean that could be a Celtics pick, a Celtics position to move up. It could be the Bulls. It could be the Mavs. It could be literally anybody. So that 2nd spot and the 4th spot are really what I'm looking at to kind of start things off. I think 1 is going to be Ayton. 2, I have no idea. 3 is probably going to be Doncic if he's there. 4, I have no idea. So those 2 spots are going to kind of set the rest of the order. Micah, Kevin Knox, I have him going 11, but I really, really, really like him. I think that he's got great size. I think he's going to be one of those guys kind of like Devin Booker where we didn't really get a chance to see everything he did in college because those Kentucky teams are so talented and fairly deep. I think he's going to be a really good scorer at the professional level, especially if he continues to work on his jump shot. And I really like his size. Defensively, question marks there, but you know, we pretty often ignore those kinds of things. Devin Booker's not a very good defender, and a lot of people really like him, myself included. So I really like Kevin Knox. It's just there's so many good players in the top 10 of this draft that I had him going 11 to the Hornets. Alex, Sexton at 12 for me is just, for the Clippers, like I said earlier, I feel like they need to pick a guard to guard against Avery Bradley potentially leaving. They need a younger guy, and him and Patrick Beverley would be a really nice combination for him to learn from, because I think Colin Sexton can be an outstanding NBA defender. I have question marks about his ability to shoot the jump shot, but I think he's going to improve those things. And if you watch those Alabama games, there's just such a lack of spacing on the floor that it's difficult for him to be very efficient. So the NBA game, I think having more spacing is going to allow him to have a little bit more room to operate, especially in ball screens. I think he could have a rookie year pretty similar to Dennis Smith Jr.'s, depending on where he goes, where he's not very efficient, but he shows a lot of really good things. So I think as long as he can continue to work on his jump shot, I really like him. I think he's a bit of a safer pick, and I don't know that his upside is all that high. Noah, that's an interesting question that I haven't seen anybody bring up. It says, do you think the Dwight trade will stunt Jared Allen's growth? I'm not that worried about it because in all likelihood, Dwight is not going to be around next year. It's only going to be a one-year thing. And I think the Nets would prioritize Jared Allen over Dwight Howard anyway. So if they feel like it is stunting his growth, then they would just play him over Dwight and it wouldn't be a big deal. So I doubt it, and I trust in the GM god, Sean Marks, so I'm not worried about it. Miguel says, do you think the Spurs can get the better end of a trade involving Kawhi? I could see a situation like Isaiah to Cleveland with his injury. Yeah, so there was supposed to be a Kawhi video out on the channel today, and Adobe Premiere was not cooperating with me today, so I didn't get a chance to get it out. But I keep hearing new things every day about Kawhi, about the Spurs being all in on moving him, about them not wanting to move him at all. Apparently, Pop met with him yesterday. So the couple of things to know is he's not going to get traded, I don't think, until at least the biggest free agent dominoes have fallen, because I don't think like LA would, or Boston or Philly really wants to make a move until they know how all of those chips have fallen. So I don't think it's going to happen until after that, but I highly doubt he's going to wear a Spurs uniform next year, and he is going to play for someone else. Who that's going to be, I have no idea. I think they can get a really good return from him though, but I do think there's going to be some hesitation from teams about how much is too much for a guy that played a handful of games this past year, might be playing on one leg, and is probably going to try and leave for LA in 12 months. So there's a lot of risk involved there, but if you're Boston or you're Philly, I mean, that could be the final piece you need, assuming he's healthy. So I think it's one of the more interesting trade scenarios we've seen in a long, long time. The best point guard in the draft, Micah, I don't know, because I mean the guys that I have at the top here, obviously, if you want to call Trae Young a point guard, him, Sexton, and then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and I don't think there's a ton of separation there. I think it just depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a guy that's, you know, going to be more scoring oriented, then I think that, you know, you can look at Trae Young, obviously, the best shooter of the group as well. If you're looking for a guy that's just going to be an outstanding defender but needs to work on his jump shot, then you've got Colin Sexton. And if you just want a guy with great size that, you know, could end up being maybe the best out of all of them, then you would look at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So those are probably the three. I don't know where I would rank them each. Obviously, I have Young and then Sexton and then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but that has a little bit more to do with team fit than anything else. Yeah, Mike, if you're considering Doncic a point guard, then I would say him. But I'd say he's more of like a 2-3 that's going to handle the ball a lot. And the term point guard's kind of outdated anyway. But if you want to consider Doncic one, then I would say him. But if you're not considering him one, then one of those three guys. Oscar says, who do you think will slip in the draft? Like I said, it really depends, right? It depends on how the whole thing goes and who gets picked where. I think there's potential for Bagley maybe to fall a little bit. And I think it may be Jaren Jackson, but it might not even be falling, because if he goes outside the top 5, I don't know that you'd necessarily call that a fall, but I think that's a spot where someone could really steal him if he ended up going maybe to like the Bulls at 7 or something like that. So those would be the first two guys I would think of, and maybe Michael Porter Jr., but from everything I've read, if he's there at 8, then the Cavs are going to pick him, so I don't really anticipate him going that far down the board. MH, I heard that. I heard that the Knicks are interested in trading for Bamba, and I think that's actually, wouldn't that be cool? Like, that'd be really cool. Him and Porzingis in the front court, they'd be huge. And if Bamba can learn how to shoot the ball, that's some stuff that you run in 2K, right? Like two guys are just absolutely monstrous. They can both shoot the ball. I don't know that Bamba's actually going to be able to be a guy that can spread the floor, but that'd be a really interesting fit if they moved up maybe to the Grizzlies spot. I don't know who they could trade really to move up to that point, because they're probably not going to give up Ntilikina, but if they could, that'd be really interesting to have that front court combination, as well as that front court combination in Chicago. I think there's a lot of interesting places for Bamba to go, and again, me having him at 7 is probably lower than a lot of other people, but you have to understand that when I made the mock draft, I tried my very best to stay outside of like the mock draft consensus, right? The consensus that Ayton is going to be one, because these are my own opinions, not projections. So everybody has Ayton as the first guy. You know, everybody has Bagley going before Wendell Carter. Everybody is super high on Mo Bamba. And I took myself away from that. I didn't look at other people's mock drafts, and I just looked at how I evaluate the prospects without thinking, oh, this guy has to move up or this guy has to move down. I just started from scratch and that's where I put Mo Bamba. But again, I don't hate him. I just think there's a lot of really good players in this class. Mitch, no, I don't think he's going to get drafted. Andy, what's up, dude? It's good to see you. Andy says, I love if the Knicks tried to trade up to get Bamba. Yeah, man, it would be interesting for sure. What I'm planning on doing moving forward is, so I told you guys the Kawhi video wasn't able to get edited today, but I'm planning on coming out with like a draft winners and losers thing as soon as the draft is over, like the very next day. And I think if the Knicks manage to move up, depending on who they have to give up, I mean, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't really know who they would be able to give up. But if they were able to do that, it would be a really interesting front court. Andy, I appreciate you coming out. Rex, did you read that comment the other day where Doc said that I look like Tyler Zeller or a fan fiction Ron Weasley? Yeah. Nanad, SGA is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Casper says, what do you think of the Cavs potentially moving their pick for a veteran star now when LeBron will most likely leave compared to earlier in the year when LBJ was in need of another star? Thoughts? Yeah. The Cavs need a wing whether Bron's there or not, but it depends. Like if Bron leaves, right, Porter Jr. is probably a better fit than Bridges because they need a guy that can score the ball, and Porter Jr. probably has more upside and things like that. But if they just need a 3-and-D guy, then one of the Bridges would fit well. So the Cavs pick, like I said in the video, is super difficult to project, but I don't think they're going to trade it. I think that they're probably accepting that Bron's not going to be there, and they're going to pick a high upside guy, maybe Porter Jr., to kind of build from there. I really don't think they're going to trade for like Kemba or any of the Raptors guys or anything like that. George says, what do you think? Excuse me, hold on. George says, what do you think will be the best 3 players from this draft in 20 years? I mean, the 2 that come to mind, I love Jaren Jackson and I love Luka Doncic. The rest of them, I'm not sure. I mean, I would say DeAndre Ayton, just if you're looking at my mock draft, I would say those 3, but the 2 that I'm most sure about in this entire draft are Jaren Jackson and Luka Doncic. Someone asked me about Anthony Simmons, and I want to answer the question. Steven with a V, says Anthony Simmons will be a potential star having not played college ball or major bust. I actually saw him play at IMG, was it 4 months ago? I actually saw him play, and the Houston Rockets were actually there scouting him at IMG. They had a couple of people there. Someone else was there too. Tom Crean was there. I have no idea. I think he's a really interesting guy, and I'm a little shocked people aren't talking about him more because he went a really interesting route where he went, high school, post-grad, and then straight to the NBA. I really like him. I mean, he's super athletic. He can shoot the crap out of the ball. And if you're one of those teams in the late 20s or, early 20s and you're trying to just get a stud that late in the draft, that's a pretty good guy to take a big swing on if you're not interested in maybe DiVincenzo or Grayson Allen. That's a really interesting guy to pick. So I'm glad you brought him up. Costas says, what do you think about Costas Antetokounmpo? I haven't really seen him play, to be honest. I don't have a ton of info on him in my mind. Celtics are probably drafting Grayson Allen with the 27th pick. What's your opinion on him? Could be a steal. I think he could be a steal. I mean, he's a little bit older, and he's a little bit up and down in college in terms of, some of the issues that he had, as well as his play could be pretty inconsistent. I'm not big on him, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up being, a solid rotation guy either. I just don't know that he's going to be that great of an athlete, and I think his shooting ability is a little bit inconsistent. So I think he could be a steal, but again, once you get that late in the draft, it's pretty tough to tell. Dizzy says, what do you think of SGA? I really like him, mostly because of his size. I really like his fit with the Nuggets because they kind of need a wing, and there's not really, on my mock draft, there's not really a ton left. I mean, if you want to count Lonnie Walker as a wing, you can, but he's more of a guard. So getting a point guard with size, I think, would be really good for them. And I really like SGA. I like his improvement. I like a lot of the potential that he showed at Kentucky. I think that there's, like I said, keep saying, there's a lot of really good players at the top of the draft. So him going down to 14, it might be a surprise, but it isn't the worst thing in the world for him. Rydog says, do you think Bagley will be a great player right away, or will he need time? I think out of all of these guys, if you're looking for someone that's going to make an immediate impact, I think Bagley's right near the top of that list, just because of his athleticism, his ability to run the floor. He can score inside. He's a great vertical threat in lobs and in ball screens. So for an immediate impact guy, I think he'll do very well. I just don't know how much more room he has to grow. And I know I said earlier that, Wendell Carter Jr. is a better all-around basketball player than he is right now, and that's true. But I think that Bagley's athleticism gives him, a little bit more of a leg up from the jump. But then as, Carter Jr. begins to develop a little bit more, those skills that he has will make him the better long-term prospect. But in terms of an immediate impact guy, next year, like as a rookie, depending on the situation, I think Bagley could do very, very well. And I would love to see him go to Dallas. Yvonne says, or no, Matthew says, Marvin Bagley is a rich man's Josh Smith. Isn't it weird how we can only give player comparisons for players that are the same handedness as them? Oh. Oscar, no, I don't. Rick says, do you think the Celtics will trade up in the draft, and for who? I think it's possible for one of the bigs. Like we've talked about this a little bit in terms of the way their contracts are constructed. They kind of need a big, it's really the only thing that they need, unless they really want to get Kawhi for some more star power, but they really need a big for when Al Horford leaves. And then, if he gets hurt, things like that. That's kind of the one spot that they need, is a mobile 5-man, potentially being able to shoot. So I could see them trading up depending on how the bigs fall. If they're big fans of Mo Bamba and maybe he falls to 5 or 6 or 7, I could see them moving up. Or if they, really big on Jaren Jackson, I don't know. But they're always players because of the amount of future picks they have, the amount of young talent they have, and then, having Marcus Smart and Marcus Morris as well to kind of make the contracts work. George says, do you think Bamba's Gobert 2.0? Yeah, kind of. There's the potential for him to be able to shoot the ball, but I think defensively he's pretty much going to be that, and you get the good and bad of that, his ability to defend the rim, but Gobert can't stay in front of guys in ball screens, and I think that definitely prevents him from having a much bigger impact on the team. Gangsta says, who do you have winning the World Cup? I haven't watched a single match, but I'm not a huge international soccer guy. Bosco says, are you going to put the draft on live? I'm not going to do like a live reaction or anything. One, because there's copyright issues with having the draft, and I'd have to have it like muted if I'm watching it, and there'd be a stream delay, and I'm going out to watch it. So no, I will not do anything live for the draft, but I'll have a video out very, very soon after. Yeah, the Ed says, I think this is a really deep draft. I would agree. I think it's probably, like I said, one of the more interesting drafts we've had in a while, and I think in terms of depth, it's definitely up there just because there's so many bigs and so many good wings and, a couple of good guards as well. I would agree. It's a very, very deep draft, especially if you're just looking at the lottery. It's football, man. Football, soccer, however you call it. Harry says, who do you think the Hawks will take? Everything I've seen is going to say that it's going to be Doncic. I wouldn't be surprised if it's someone else, depending on if someone moves up to 2 to maybe get Doncic. But everything I'm seeing says if Doncic is there at 3, that's who the Hawks are going to pick, and I think that would be great for them. Matthew, I have no idea, dude. I have no idea why LiAngelo Ball is getting workouts. Lord knows. Didn't he work out for like the Warriors the other day or something? Who knows? Kent, who's better, Mikal or Miles? I like Mikal Bridges a little bit better, but I can see why people really like Miles Bridges. Just for me personally, I like Mikal Bridges. I know he's a little bit older, but I like the consistency and shooting that he showed. Obviously, Miles is an outstanding athlete, but he's not as long. He doesn't have a great wingspan for a guy his size, and I think that separates them. But there's not a ton of separation, honestly. The Edge, are you talking about Jerome Robinson with their other pick? I think Jerome's obviously going to be like a probably like top 25 guy. It wouldn't be a bad pick for them at all if they pick him at 19, especially if they don't get Doncic. I think he's definitely a first-round guy, whether it's the Hawks or someone else. William says, which team in the top 6 will have the best record next year? Oh, Ed, you're talking about Mitchell Robinson. I'll think about it. The best record in the top 6. We have the Suns, Kings, Hawks, Grizz, Mavs, and Magic. I'd say probably the Mavs, just because they're the most motivated to actually do well, because it's probably Dirk's last year. They don't really like tanking. They already have Dennis Smith, Harrison Barnes, and whoever they get in this one, and then potentially getting a 5-man in free agency as well. So I would say the Mavs. Yeah, Edge, I see what you're saying with the Hawks. Actually, you're talking about Collins. He had a really, really good rookie year. Like, we got caught up with Tatum and Mitchell and Ben Simmons and Lonzo Ball. We got caught up with all these guys. But John Collins had a really good rookie year. So, yeah, Mitchell Robinson's an interesting guy. Kind of like Anthony Simmons in the fact that they didn't play college basketball. But there's also some upside associated with that because you don't really know how good they might be. Connor says, do you think Noah says, should the Mavs go for Boogie Cousins? I think they're probably more in it for DeAndre Jordan just because of the way they generally use their bigs. But I wouldn't be surprised, but I really don't think Boogie is going to go anywhere but New Orleans or LA. Gavin says, do you think the Kings will go with Porter Jr.? Probably. You know, because it's the Kings, and that's the thing that they would do. They would pick a player at 2 that they could trade down and probably get at 5 or 6. I wouldn't be surprised. But like I said, that's kind of where the draft starts for me, is at 2 and at 4. The Edge, no, I don't play fantasy basketball. I tried it, either like on DraftKings or something, but no, I don't. It's just too much for me to keep up with. Ken says, why do you think some people doubt Luka Doncic? I think it's the Euro thing, and I honestly just think that it's that. Like, some people making the argument, that Mario Hezonja didn't play very well his first couple of years, and he came from that league. But Mario Hezonja, wasn't the best player on the team. He wasn't the leader, and he was like the 9th or 10th man and still got drafted in the top 5. So again, I'm not going to go over it again. I just don't understand why we're doubting him as much as we are. Success, I doubt Trae Young's going to fall out of the lottery, dude. I'd be pretty shocked. I think that if the Knicks are, if he's there for the Knicks at 9, I don't think he's going past that. So no, I don't think so. Mr. Clone, do you think Leonard's going to get traded? I think he is. I think it's a lot more likely this time because it's like not like an official trade request, but the report seems a lot more concrete than it did before, where he was just upset. Like, this most recent report was basically saying that he wants to leave. And even last night, after he met with Pop, there were reports that he's still very upset about the comments that were being made about his group and about his injury. So I think he's gone. I really do. George, yeah, it's always possible for SGA to get picked higher than Trae Young. It just depends on the team fit. I definitely could see SGA going in the top 8, potentially the Cavs. Like, it would not shock me at all. You got to understand, when I did these picks, like, these are my opinions, but it's such a subjective thing that any of these guys could go anywhere, and I could be completely wrong in terms of my own evaluation. I could be completely wrong. Like, the draft is such a subjective thing that you could make an argument for any of these guys to be anywhere, honestly. Like, last year, let's say before the draft, I put up a mock draft on screen and I say, I think Donovan Mitchell's, a top 5, top 3 prospect in the draft, right? Everybody would be like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. And then he had a great rookie year and he got drafted, 12th, I think, 14th. So you got to understand how subjective it is. And it's so difficult to be right in these things, honestly. I have no expectation that I'm 100% right on all these guys. But I have a couple of guys that I'm very, very passionate about and believe very strongly in, being, Doncic, Jackson, and Wendell Carter. M8 says, who's your second round prospect steal? That's a really good question. I really like Javon Carter, but that's kind of a common one, so I'll go with someone else. It's a good question. I plan on making a video on this, but the draft kind of snuck up on me. I didn't really have time. I really like Raleigh Hawkins from Arizona, as you know, just a really, really good two guard that can defend, plays really hard, is going to end up shooting the ball well. So I really like him. So I would say Javon Carter or him. Yes, oh mate. Hashtag Team Luka for sure. Yeah, Money. You're not the only one that's surprised, bud. Hold on. Yeah, you can go. All right. Thoughts on Bates Diop? He's an interesting guy because he's so he's just so tough to figure out, right? Like he can end up being a really good player or not. He's one of those guys you're gonna have to take a big swing on. Nah, I can't stream the draft on here, bud. YouTube would kill me. Paragon says, do you think Randall will still be playing with the Lakers next year? Everything's up in the air for the Lakers. They could roll out the same lineup that they just rolled out. They could roll out the same lineup plus PG. They could do it plus Bron and PG. They could do it plus Kawhi, Bron, and PG. I have no idea. I think Julius Randle is probably one of the most interesting free agent situations of the summer. And if I was going to do another free agent Friday, he would probably be the player that I would do it on. It's going to be really interesting. Him, Aaron Gordon, Jabari Parker are all restricted free agents, and their market is going to be a really, really interesting thing to watch. Josh says, what do you think the Wolves would do or should do this offseason? Who to draft, who to sign, who to trade? Apparently Jamal Crawford's not coming back. Apparently Karl-Anthony Towns is unhappy. Andrew Wiggins. Apparently Jimmy's upset at Andrew Wiggins. They're a mess. Like they always have been. They're an absolute mess. I don't think Thibodeau is long for that job. I think he's probably going to get, I don't know about fired, but he's just probably not going to be their coach beyond next year. I have no idea what the Wolves should do. They're in a tough spot. I would try and trade Wiggins. I don't think there's much out there for him. Cat is definitely the building block, and Jimmy's kind of out of the timeline. I mean, I really like him as a player, but they're probably more of a long-term team than a short-term team, but they're pretty stuck, bud. I don't know. It's tough to try and figure out positive moves they can make just because of the situation they put themselves in. Maxwell, I think they could. He said, do you think the Cavs could make the playoffs without Bron? I think they could if they keep K-Love and, use the 8th pick on a guy that's going to have a big impact. I think they're still an Eastern Conference playoff team, even if Bron leaves, if they want to be. Now, if they want to trade everybody away, like has been rumored, I wouldn't blame them for it. But if they really want to make the playoffs, I think they definitely still could. Mr. What-A-Day says, what are the Hornets doing? Who knows, dude? Who knows? Your guess is as good as mine. Rex, not a big fan of Duvall. Yeah, I don't like him either. Listero Man says, what would be your mastermind controversial trade this summer? Controversial trade. I'll think about it. Omade says, if you're the Lakers, what is your package for Kawhi? I don't think Kawhi is going to go to the West. And let me rephrase that. The only way I could see Kawhi being traded to LA is if nobody in the East wants him because they know he's going to leave for LA as a free agent anyway. If the teams in the East don't think that he's going to leave, then they're going to trade for him. If they think he's going to leave, they're not going to trade for him. And if that happens, LA could be in play. But that has to happen first. Like the Spurs are not going to trade him to LA within their own conference if they can help it at all. Now, if they just need to get value for him because nobody in the East is going to trade for a 1-year rental, then he could be in there. I've done a trade machine Tuesday on Kawhi before, but that was before he officially requested a trade and the Spurs had a little bit more leverage. Now, I don't know. I mean, they've got plenty of assets, right? I'm actually probably not going to give you an actual trade package because Lakers fans would kill me for trying to trade away either Kuzma or Ingram. So if it was me, I would probably try and do, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it because they're gonna get upset with me. Yeah, Harry, I get what you're saying. He said, why wouldn't the Spurs trade Kawhi to the Lakers if it's the best offer? If he's going to leave in a year, be there in a year anyway. The thing is, Kawhi's trade preference doesn't mean anything to the Spurs. Absolutely nothing. He doesn't have a no trade clause. It doesn't impact them whatsoever. The only way it impacts them is if the Lakers have by far the best offer. I think they're going to have to be far and away the best offer in order to actually get him because, again, the Spurs really don't want him to be in the West. Now, if there's no other suitors for him and they just really want to get value out of him, then sure, trade him to the Lakers to get the best offer. But I just think it's going to have to be so much better than Philly or Boston because they really don't want to send him to the West. Oscar says, what should the Magic do? The Magic are so weird because you'd think with the amount of times they'd been in the lottery recently, they'd have like some really good young players. I mean, Aaron Gordon's pretty good. That's about it, right? Like they have, you know, Elfrid Payton got traded away for a second-round pick. Jonathan Isaac barely played as a rookie. Hazanya's okay, but he's an unrestricted free agent. Like it seems like they should have more talent than they do with the amount of lottery picks that they've had. So if I was them, I'd try and take a big swing, try and get Porter Jr. But other than that, I don't know. They're in a tough spot. Steven with a V, Moritz Wagner going to be the steal of the second round. I really like him. I know I'm not pronouncing his name correctly because I can't do a German accent, but I do really, really like him. Just question marks about, you know, defensive ability and strength for me. But when you're getting that late into the second round or into the second round at all, you're going to have to live with some flaws from these guys. So if you think that he's going to be able to make up for that and get stronger and get a little bit quicker, I think he's got a lot of skill. He can pass the ball. He can shoot it. Put it on the floor a little bit. Really, really versatile guy offensively. Just defensively, there's definitely some question marks. Mate says, who's the player in the NBA that is the best comparison to Luka if he reaches his potential? This is not my personal comparison because I don't really do that a ton. I said in the video, Jaren Jackson Jr. and Chris Bosh, but apart from that, a comparison that I saw, I can't for the life of me, I think it might have been Russillo. So basically, when we do NBA player comparisons, right, like if it's a European white guy, then you have to compare him to a European white guy, right? Like that's just the way it is. But his comparison that he threw out in terms of like Doncic's ceiling, right? Like if he's the best, if he becomes the best player he can be, his skill set and his game apparently reminds Russillo a lot of James Harden. And the meaning behind that is not a great athlete, but very skilled, has that step back jumper in his game, can get to the rim, get to the foul line, and is just a crafty scorer, but is not a fantastic athlete. Again, that's not my personal comparison, but that's one that I saw that's really, really interesting. Andres, I'm a Nets fan, bud. So big day for me today. Paragon says, what do you think it would take to find a team willing to trade for Deng's contract? A lottery pick? Like, or a really good player, like when they attached D'Angelo Russell to the Mozgov trade. Like that deal is just, it's just so bad. And it's preventing them from doing much bigger things this summer than even the really big things that they are able to do. So it'd take a lot because there's just not a lot of teams out there that have the space. So, I mean, you'd probably have to attach a good young player to it, and you probably shouldn't do that because you're going to be taking away assets to either make a big trade or just assets on the floor. Yeah, Doc, that's what I mean. Doc says Doncic equals Manu, so you have to compare him to a European white guy. But it's not a bad comparison. I'm not saying you're wrong for comparing him to Manu. I'm just saying generally, like, that's what we always have to do. Steven says, is this the last pick for the Nets-Boston trade? If so, do the Nets tank? I think the Nets get their own pick next year, or I don't think it's a draft swap. I think they have their own pick next year. And I think 2020, maybe the Celtics have a pick swap, but beyond that, I think they're good. I think they're good. Yeah, MH, the Nets could have 2 max contracts, but that's next year. Once Dwight's contract comes off, once DeMar Carroll's contract comes off, it's not this year. I know the Bleacher Report notification said they have 2 max contract spaces. It's not true. It's next year. Okay, international. Excuse me. You have to compare international players. Manu's not European. I apologize. Chris says, do the Suns trade back into the lottery, and if so, do they go with a point guard? I've heard some things about them trying to trade back in to get maybe Trae Young. So you're not completely off base there. Again, I think it just depends on how things fall. I don't really know who they have on the roster that has a ton of value outside of Devin Booker that they could use to trade up. Maybe TJ Warren, because he's on a pretty good deal moving forward. I don't know how much value Dragan Bender and Marquise Chris have, even though they're still on their rookie deals. They haven't shown a ton on the floor. So they probably could. And I don't think that they would do it for anybody other than a point guard. So if maybe we get to 8 and, you know, they know the Knicks are going to take Trae Young and they really want Trae Young and he gets to that point, I could see them maybe moving up to 8 and putting a package together. Adam says, who would get Memphis's 4th pick if they trade it? I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. The 3 teams to look at. The Mavs flipping with them, the Bulls flipping with them, and then Boston moving up potentially. Jabari says, would you do the 5th pick for Jaylen Brown? Depends on who's there, because I really like Jaylen Brown. I do. I think that all of those wings that they have in Boston are going to be so crucial moving forward if they want to win a championship. And I think Jaylen Brown has shown a ton of growth and potential in his, few years in the league. Depends on how much you really like one of these bigs, because that's kind of, if you're looking at maybe spreading out, spreading the worth around the roster a little bit, then maybe you could try and get a big at 5, maybe Jaren Jackson, maybe Mo Bamba. But if I'm Boston, I'm completely fine running it back with the same group next year with a healthy Kyrie and a healthy Gordon Hayward. That's still probably an NBA Finals team if Bron's not in the East, and even if Bron is in the East, that's probably an NBA Finals team if they just run it back with the same group. If they don't trade for Kawhi, if they don't get a big in this draft, they're probably still going to be the favorite in the East in Vegas. So I'm completely fine with doing that as well. All right, guys, we're going to go 10 more minutes. 10 more minutes. Yvonne, what's your opinion of the Nets management recently? I think they're great. I think Sean Marks is an outstanding GM. I like Kenny Atkinson as a coach, and I wish they would have been around earlier instead of Billy King. Yeah, Adam says if the Bulls get it, then who do they pick? If you're talking about if they get the 4th pick, yeah, I think the only reason they would trade up is to get, because I've heard so much about them wanting Mo Bamba, and if they think that maybe Dallas is going to pick him, then that's probably where they're going to move to get up to 4. But again, the order could remain the exact same. We could have 3 picks traded inside the top 10. I have no idea, but I'm really excited to find out. Chris says, does Kemba get traded tomorrow? If he doesn't get traded tomorrow, it's probably not going to happen until after free agency. So I think there's a chance, maybe with the Cavs, but that's a pretty big swing if you don't know that Bron's coming back, obviously. Maybe the Nuggets, depending on how things fall. I think it's a possibility. I think he definitely could get traded tomorrow. Micah says, who is the most likely star to get traded tomorrow? Kemba's definitely up there. I don't think Kawhi is going to happen because I don't think the Spurs have really accepted that they're going to have to get rid of him. And I don't think that there's enough. That's pretty quick of a turnaround to have the official trade request come through and then, want to trade him away. Yes, Mike, my name really is Tucker. Josh, I've seen a lot about him. I haven't watched a ton of Maryland, though, so I'm not really going to give my opinion on him because for the most part, like my focus for the draft was on the lottery picks and then maybe some late round sleepers. And I just didn't come across him a ton. I've seen videos on him, like from other NBA YouTubers, but I haven't myself watched a ton on him. So I'm not really going to give my opinion on him. Casper says, do you think the Warriors will produce some more draft day magic by buying into the second round again or getting a good player at 28? Do you think their success is from good scouts or development? I think it's a combination of things, and it's easier as a late round guy or a second round guy to look good in Golden State than it is in Dallas or Chicago because there's just so many good players around you. Like Jordan Bell didn't have to do a ton, right? He wasn't asked to do a lot. Kevon Looney was allowed to kind of come along a little bit after being selected late in the first round, and it was a pretty key player for them late in the year and in the playoffs. So I don't know that it's necessarily scouting or development. I mean, it is that, but also you have to throw in just it's a much better situation to be in basketball-wise to showcase your skills. Mike, that's interesting. I haven't really seen a ton about Miami trading for Wiggins, and I think Miami's just in like the worst luxury cap situation of any team. I think they have like $140+ million committed in salary for next year already because Tyler Johnson's poison pill part of his deal kicks in and he's making like $16 million a year. So I don't know who they could offer in terms of assets and salary to make it worth it for Minnesota. Because, I mean, Josh Richardson comes to mind, but they love him, so I don't think they're going to trade him. So I think it's unlikely. Chris, I've heard a lot about, or I've seen a lot of comments and stuff about Zaire Smith. And I've seen a lot about him, but again, I think that maybe we're getting a little bit too much on a hype train for him. He's a great athlete, and I think he's probably going to end up being pretty good, but I don't know about, a lottery pick guy or moving up to get him. I think maybe we're getting a little too excited about him just because there's been so much about him in terms of content creation and on Twitter and everything. Why are you so high on Luka's defense is suspect and will be playing against way better offensive guards? I mean, we've long ignored the defensive side of the ball for a player to be considered an all-star, a really good player in the NBA, right? Like, people love Devin Booker, not a very good defender. People love Karl-Anthony Towns, not a very good defender. So, I have concerns about his ability to defend, but if he was slow and 6'3", okay, that's one thing. He's slow and like a legitimate like 6'7", 6'8", like he's huge. So he's going to be able to make up for a little bit of that lack of quickness with his length. And I just think he's going to be so good offensively that he's going to be able to make up for some of that lack of defensive ability. And he can learn to be better, with that length. Andrew, I've noticed that too, bud. Like, especially at the top, there's Jackson Jr., Carter Jr., Bagley III, Porter Jr., Williams III. There's a lot of juniors and thirds in this. All right, we're going to go 4 more minutes. 4 more minutes. Yeah, Chris, I feel like Devin Booker is one of those guys that pretty universally people really, really like. But again, we're just, because he's on a bad team, we're just ignoring his defense. And he's probably not, if he really put in effort, probably not a bad defender. It's just, it's the Suns, and you're not really super competitive in many of the games. So putting in a lot of defensive effort probably isn't really all that worth it, to be honest. Daniel, Jello is somewhere at home getting ready to play in the JBL, hopefully. Chris, I wouldn't be surprised. Chris says Lonnie Walker ends up in the lottery. I would not be shocked. Would not be shocked at all. He's, pretty big, high risk, high reward kind of guy. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if he won the lottery. Stephen the V, DeAndre Ayton said a lot of things. Michael Porter Jr. has said a lot of things. DeAndre Ayton is obviously very confident he's going to go 1, and I don't blame him for it. Like, I appreciate the confidence, but him and Devin Booker, Kobe and Shaq 2.0, I think we should probably relax a little bit. Kareem, I appreciate that, bud. Thank you. No, Casper, I don't. Paragon says, how do you feel about Luke Walton as a coach? Which is a really interesting question. I'm going to answer that, and I'm going to answer one more, and then we're going to be done. I think he's done a very good job in LA, and I think, he had every right to deserve that job after how well he did with the Warriors. Having said that, I do think it could potentially be a deterrent to LeBron James going to LA. Now, I do think that's where Bron's going to end up, but Luke Walton being as young as he is and being fairly new to the coaching game, I think could be a bit of an issue in terms of Bron wanting to be there. But as a coach, I do really like him. All right, one more. Let me see. Let's get a draft theme question to finish it off. I've seen a lot of other stuff. A draft theme question here. Steven says, biggest potential bust, question mark. If you're looking at top 10 guys, I would probably say Michael Porter Jr., which we talked about a little bit last time, just because he, hasn't played a ton of college basketball. He's had some serious injury issues. Like, for you to miss the entire season is not to be taken lightly in terms of how severe those injuries are. So I would say him in the top 10. Outside of that, I mean, there's just so many guys that I probably wouldn't be able to give a name. Money Max says Jaren Jackson will be a bust. All right, let me make my case for Jaren Jackson, and then we're going to go. So I got a lot of hate for Jaren Jackson being second. That's fine. I have got a lot of hate for him being even inside the top 5. Also fine. People are allowed to disagree. That's cool. I knew when I put it out, it wasn't going to be a popular selection. Okay. First thing that people bring up is that he fouls out a lot and doesn't play a lot. His foul rate is very similar as a freshman to Karl-Anthony Towns and Joel Embiid. Okay. Foul rate does not concern me. His stats, people said he only averaged 10 and 5. How are you going to pick him second overall? He averaged 10 and 5 and only 22 minutes a game. And Michigan State's front court was one, very talented, and 2, had a lot of older players on it. And Tom Izzo didn't play him over some of those older players that often. And also the fouls played into that. But in terms of his skill set, in terms of his versatility, his defensive potential, he's 6'11" with a 7'4" wingspan, shot almost 40% from 3 on over 2.5 attempts per game, and is just a very, very versatile player. I think he's a guy that you're going to be able to switch onto guards and ball screens or off ball screens, and it'll be very effective at staying in front of other guards. I think he's going to be able to protect the rim. I think he's going to be able to shoot the ball, run the floor, and he's just going to be everything you need in a combo 4-5 man in the NBA. Big enough to play the 5, quick enough to play the 4, can shoot at either of those spots. Is just a very versatile defender, and those are the kinds of guys you need at the 5 spot in my opinion. You can't just go for the biggest guy. You can't just go for the guy that has great post moves. You need a guy that's versatile, that can do a lot of things, that can switch screens, that can stay in front of guards, and that can shoot the ball and play the 4 and the 5. And Jaren Jackson can do every single one of those things. So there you have it. And I completely understand people not liking Jaren Jackson because of the stats, because of the foul rate. It does not bother me one bit, because the whole point of this, right? Like, the NBA draft is a very subjective thing. And at the end of the day, none of us really know what's going to happen tomorrow. And none of us really know what any of these guys are going to end up being. But the fun of it is having these discussions. And I appreciate you guys in the comment section and in the chat that have those discussions and are able to have those discussions in a way that you're not insulting anyone, right? You're just saying, these are the facts. This is why I like a guy. This is why I don't like a guy. Because you could probably talk me into any of the players on the, not talk me into, but I would listen to any evaluation you have of a player, as long as you come at me with something tangible. You come at me with stats. You come at me with some observations you've made. I would listen. And that comes for the draft. It comes for any players in the league. It comes for trades. It comes for anything. As long as you come at me with something substantial, with something logical, with some reasoning, then I'll have a conversation with you about anything. And I really appreciate those of you guys that do the same thing. Now, to those of you that just absolutely crush me for having Jaren Jackson number 2 and, call people names, then, at some point you should probably learn how to have a discussion with someone without insulting them and by bringing reasoning and logic. So I thank you guys for coming out. We're going to end it right here. It's a little bit after 7. I've got some things to do. Again, I thank you guys for showing up. There will be a draft video very, very soon after the draft. My plan is I'm going to watch the draft, and then once I get home from watching the draft, I'm going to put together some winners and losers of the draft and put it out as soon as I'm done with it. I'm going to stay up late. I'm going to crank it out right after the draft. Try and be the first video out there for you guys to see some of my thoughts and opinions on the draft. So again, I thank you guys for watching. I thank you guys for coming out. Appreciate everybody that was interactive in the chat. This is the highest, I can tell you right now, it's the highest viewership we've had on one of these, up over 100 most of the time. So I thank you guys so much for coming out. I appreciate it. I hope you guys have a good night. I hope you have a good weekend. And you should be seeing me again Friday, very, very early in the day, American time Friday, about some NBA draft stuff. So again, just thank you guys very much, and I'll see you all next time.